My name is Lee Jones, and I'm the CEO of the Onyx Table. The Onyx Table is a peer advisory group for Black C-suite executives. And one of the tenets of the Onyx Table is to curate voices that aren't typically heard that espouse business leadership and things that our community isn't always credited with. And toward that end, we're going to have a discussion today about the role of the Black business leader. And I have a tremendous Black business leader with me who is going to give her perspective. And I am very pleased to participate in this conversation with her. And that is Jodie Harris. Jodie Harris is an industry leader in economic development with 3 decades of experience spanning the public, private, and nonprofit sectors. Jodie is the president of PIDC, whose mission I'll let her describe, and is a powerful executive voice across a wide spectrum of businesses in the Philadelphia area. Prior to joining PIDC, she served 4 years as director of Community Development Financial Institutions Fund, or CDFI Fund. In that role, Jody ensured the agency fulfilled its critical function of empowering mission driven financial institutions that support economically underserved communities across the country. Under her leadership, Jody annually managed an appropriated budget of approximately 300 million and also led a team that administered $3 billion in pandemic recovery funding, the highest level of appropriated grant funding in CDFI fund history. Jody is a native of Philadelphia. Yes, as am I. She holds a bachelor's degree in finance and international business from the University of Maryland and has earned 2 graduate degrees from New York University, an MBA in finance and management, and an MPA in public policy. So thank you for sitting down with me today, Jody. Really appreciate your time and perspective.
Great. Thank you, Lee. I appreciate the invitation to chat with you today.
Great. So I deliberately omitted what PIDC does, of which you are the president, because I feel I couldn't do it the justice that you could. So maybe you can just start by telling us what your organization does, and the elements of it that we should be aware of.
Sure. PIDC, also known as the Philadelphia Industrial Development Corporation, is the City of Philadelphia's economic development partner. We are a standalone 501c3, but we also serve in a public private quasi government role in helping the city achieve their economic development agenda items. We primarily do three things. We, one, work closely with the city of Philadelphia, particularly the Commerce Department, to deliver resources to small businesses, small developers, and nonprofits across the city. We also manage large real estate transactions for the city. And then we own some parcels ourselves. If anyone's familiar with the Navy Yard in Philadelphia, we own and develop large industrial parcels in the city. And then third, through our separate Community Development Financial Institutions Fund, we also lend out money to small businesses, small developers, and nonprofits across the city. And part of that is also providing client engagement and business support services. So we do a little bit of everything when it comes to small business and real estate development on the commercial side in Philadelphia. We are approaching in about 2 years our 70th anniversary. So PIDC was founded much farther back than when I joined in 2023, but it has been a key organization in driving growth across the city.
Is PIDC a typical kind of organization? Like if I go to any city, I'd find a PIDC there. It seems like it's such a broad scope that it may be atypical.
It is atypical. We often talk to other economic development corporations from different cities about our structure. You'll usually find a economic development agency that does not do large scale real estate transactions, or you'll find a industrial development corporation that does not do small business lending, or you'll find that there's an organization like a port authority that does a little bit of both. So we are unique in that we have all three of those activities, working with the city directly, doing small business lending, and facilitating large real estate transactions under one roof.
Wow. And so when it comes to the small business lending portion, give me a sense of the customer journey that leads someone to PIDC.
Sure. Philadelphia is a place where small businesses can find a number of resources depending on where they are in their phase of growth. Most small businesses, when they're first starting up, will go to a smaller nonprofit organization for technical assistance, developing small business plans, or going to community college through the Power Up program. We step in once you've reached a level of about 150 to 200,000 in annual revenues. You're looking for some sort of financial product and service to help you move from startup to small business into middle market. So we're right before you become a large business, but you're not still a startup or solo entrepreneur. And the role that we play is providing financial products like contract lines of credit. So we help contractors kind of be be able to manage the flow of funds for their contracts if they're receiving funding from the city. We provide working capital lines of credit. We'll we also just launched a commercial mortgage product because we find that a lot of small businesses in this space want to purchase the building that they're in order to provide some stability and further connection to their communities. And then we also bring together tools from the federal, state, and city level for small businesses that are looking to grow through either expanding operations, expanding their manufacturing, creating a second retail, a second restaurant, who are growing through acquisition of property. So we're working with small businesses that, again, aren't startups, but they're looking to move to the next level.
And so when I talk to a lot of startups and small businesses, and it seems as though we often hear about ways that they have access to capital, like go to your bank and try to get a business loan, or more recently have a Kickstarter or GoFundMe to try to get things in addition to the traditional friends and family or bootstrapping, etc. I don't hear people saying go talk to PIDC. Like, who's your evangelist? How do these businesses know about you and discover you?
A lot of it is word of mouth. You're right. People don't know that PIDC is a resource. Mainly because we don't have a storefront. Like, we're located on a top floor of a Center City building, but we do have people who go out into the community. So more than likely, you won't see a sign that says financed by PIDC, but you'll meet one of our business development officers at either one of the diverse chamber events, at a business development workshop or seminar. And so it's word of mouth in the community of small businesses, and then us getting out into the marketplace and connecting one on one. We are looking at ways to try to get out into more communities. Our motto and mission is to drive growth through every corner of Philadelphia. So we're thinking about the ways that we can go and meet businesses where they are, as opposed to them trying to navigate the system to come to us. I will say that when people are talking about PIDC as a financing partner, it is because they have not been able to penetrate the traditional financial institutions. And so another way that people learn about us is the referral system. So we partner often with the PNCs, the TDs, the citizens, the WISFIS of the region. When they have a client that they're unable to serve, they'll say, oh, well, perhaps you should talk to PIDC. And so we kind of fill that financing gap for small businesses that aren't yet ready to go into the traditional banking system.
Yeah. Well, it sounds wonderful. When I was starting my business a long time ago, someone mentioned PIDC to me in a when I was seeking financing, but it was only in the context of when I was talking about buying a building, and someone
Hmm.
said, "Oh,
Hmm.
PIDC, you go talk to them if you want to do some sort of real estate transaction." But what you're talking about seems much more expansive, and I wish someone had been a little fuller in their explanation to me. But that was, a couple decades ago, so I'm an old guy. Um,
Well, we constantly kind of look at that business continuum, like where are businesses in different stages and what is the proper financial product. So you were ready for commercial real estate purchase, and so we worked with you to do that. But if you had come in, a couple years earlier and you were looking for working capital to get your business up and running, then we probably would have just focused on that. So the word of mouth also it's helpful, but it is limited. Like people know certain things that we do, they just don't know everything that we do.
yeah. And PIDC recently had sort of a milestone celebration, right, in its history. And I know that there was an event. I attended it. It was very well done, and a number of things were held out as major accomplishments of PIDC. So I'm interested in one, what things PIDC has been able to accomplish that you're particularly proud of, and then what do you want your legacy to be? Because I know you've been there a couple of years now and have gotten your sea legs, I imagine. So what is it that you want to add to that story as PIDC goes forward?
So the event that you're talking about is the 25th anniversary of the Navy Yard. And just a little context, we acquired the Navy Yard back in 2000. The naval bases were closing across the country, and Philadelphia had one of the largest. And basically, overnight, Philadelphia lost 10,000 jobs. It's a 1,200-acre parcel down there, and that was closed. And so the city really wanted to think about what can we do in South Philly with this parcel, where most Philadelphians probably didn't even know, outside of knowing someone who worked there, that there was this expansive tract of land that was in need of development. So we took it over in 2000. We've had two master development plans, and we are working our way across the entire parcel, not just to create an industrial campus, but also to create a community. We have one side which still has some Navy operations. We have a shipbuilder. We have a submarine parts builder. We have another community of life sciences. There are a number of small businesses who have their offices there. And then later this fall, we will be opening our first residential building. And our hope is with this new residential project that we will be attracting diverse retail down there as well. So we're really building out a community. And we just wanted to celebrate that we've been doing this for 25 years. Look where we've come, and we're excited about the next 25 years. We also have a lot of things to celebrate when it comes to small businesses. Like right now, in fact, we are hosting a workshop for small businesses who want to learn about other financing tools like New Markets Tax Credit. So we have been able to bring and introduce products to the small business community. We are working on a program with the Commerce Department called Boost Your Business, where we have some middle market companies who are coming in a cohort of CEOs. And so they're getting the benefit of peer networks as well as receiving financing from the city, which is in the form of a forgivable loan once they complete the cohort. So there's other ways that we are becoming innovative in thinking about how we serve the small business community, as well as serve some of the nonprofits that serve the small business community. So we have a lot to celebrate in terms of our ability to pivot and think about new ways to support small businesses in Philadelphia.
And this sounds like a very big job, and but you've had big jobs before, as I alluded to in the intro. What is it that sort of attracted you to this role, and what is it that you hope to achieve in it?
That's a really great question, Lee, because when I was working at the CDFI Fund down in DC, I enjoyed working there. The mission was aligned with my professional and personal values. We were deploying capital to banks, credit unions, loan funds across the country who were then deploying that capital into communities that have been traditionally underserved by the traditional banking community. And so it was a position that had me kind of overseeing the deployment of funds, but I couldn't get my hands dirty. I couldn't get in there and kind of work directly with the businesses, work directly in the community. So when I found out that this role was available, and this role was in Philly, I was like, okay, now not only can I get my hands dirty, but I could do it in my hometown. My family's still here, so I was constantly in Philadelphia visiting, but I had lost connection with the business side. I started my career here in banking, and so it was really exciting to me to be able to work three blocks down from my first job in banking and to see how the city had evolved when it came to economic development, and then be able to say that I have an opportunity to work with a team that is intricately involved in that change. So that's what was really exciting to me, being able to do the work that I love in the city that I love.
Yeah, well, we're glad that you came back and, are making things better. And I have to say, being in Philadelphia, trying to help these underserved and small businesses, there's a lot of energy around that. Lots of organizations that do various things and contribute in various ways toward that. But PIDC is unique, as you already sort of described. But I think what is even more unique is that you're at the helm, meaning that there is actually a Black executive from this city who understands and has family here and other kinds of ties, and the appropriate business acumen to really do something fundamentally different to help these companies and beyond just sort of volunteerism, et cetera. So I guess that is a good segue into the topic for today, which is the role of the Black executive and what our perspectives are. So maybe I'll just start with a blue sky kind of question and say, what is your perspective on being a Black executive and the type of role that you have in 2025?
So I was following that question. I had an answer ready, and then you threw in 2025. So 2025 is a year that I think a lot of us, I think we knew that we would be here one day. We just didn't know it was going to be today in the context of being a person of color trying to drive change in our communities when there's so many external forces that are limiting our ability to do that. But I will back up to the first part of the question in terms of being a Black executive. I am the first Black president of PIDC, and I hadn't really thought about that until I actually accepted the job and I saw how many people were excited about me being in this role. I'm thinking I just get to do what I love to do at home.
Mhm.
But the importance of having a Black executive in this role, it's not just because it was time and they had years of not having anyone of color lead the organization, but it also is a signal to the Black and Brown community of Philadelphia that we've heard you, we understand the diversity of the city, and we intentionally were looking at candidates who could not just bring the business acumen, as you mentioned, but also would have an understanding of the different challenges that our communities have to go through with they encounter. And so it was a bit overwhelming, I would say, because it is a lot of responsibility. I heard someone say once, most Black executives show up professionally with their personal selves because this means something to us.
Mm.
Being in Philadelphia and seeing, neighborhoods that I used to hang out in as a kid have new retail conveniences, have new housing, have new developments. I mean, that means something, and you can take pride in that development. So being a Black executive not only means a lot to me, but I was surprised and happy to see how much it meant to Philadelphia to have me step into the role. It also means something for a lot of us as Black executives to the staff.
Mm.
The population composition of Philly typically means that you're going to have a significant percentage of your employees be Black or Hispanic or Asian, and to have a leader that can represent diversity, I think is actually encouraging to the staff, not just the diverse staff, but all of the staff, to see that the organization and the board, they care about who represents the organization. So it was a little overwhelming, the response that I received. And so I was very humbled and thankful that people have so much confidence in me. But it also means that being the president of PIDC is one level of responsibility, but being the Black president of PIDC is another level of responsibility.
Yeah, I appreciate that point, and I think that you and I had a preparatory discussion about this, and we were discussing sort of the fine line that one has to walk between I am a qualified executive who happens to be Black
Hmm.
versus I'm bringing all of me into this job, including my Blackness, and therefore be prepared for that. And when we have to um, decide, on an ongoing basis, which one of those personas, it comes to the fore. Have you experienced anything like that in your role here at PIC over the last couple of years? Things, that brought those kinds of decisions to mind?
Yeah, I remember our call, and I think I specifically referenced there's an old episode of Law and Order where Robinette, who was the assistant DA, when he left, he said to the DA, he said, "There's a point where you have to decide: are you a lawyer who is Black, or are you a Black lawyer?" And
Mm.
so that question always comes up in terms of when you speak up and when you advocate and who you advocate for and how you advocate for different communities. And I think it's there's always a little bit of tension there because I am not the president of Black PIDC. I'm the president of all PIDC. But it's important because I am typically one of the few people of color in a lot of the rooms that I go into outside of PIDC when representing Philadelphia or representing economic development. I'm often the only woman in some of these rooms. And then again, one of the only Black people. And so I have to think about, when am I speaking up? And so you're constantly managing that tension between representing Philadelphia when it comes to economic development, but specifically speaking up when something is happening that is going to have a negative or adverse effect on your community. So over the years, I've figured out how to balance that. There probably, if I was to look back, some places where maybe I should have said more. And then there might have been some opportunities where I should have sat back and let the process happen. But in this role, and because Philadelphia is a place where, you know, we're very honest, we're very straightforward, I feel very comfortable speaking up for not just everyone impacted by economic development changes in the city, but communities that don't have a voice. And that, I think, is a different level of responsibility that we carry as Black executives compared to others, where we are sometimes the only voice in the room that can speak up for different communities. And when I say speak up for different communities, I don't just mean Black folks. I'm speaking up for Asian American communities, Hispanic communities, just making sure that people are being conscious about their decisions when they're taking in the diversity of the city. Like, what we do just doesn't impact a small group of people. It impacts all of Philadelphia, which is a diverse group of citizens, business owners, developers.
Yeah, I think that last point is really key because often things get pigeonholed into being a Black issue or a Black and brown issue. And really, what we're talking about is what is sound business and what is going to prosper the region or the broader concern. And historically, a lot of times that contribution from those communities has been overlooked or discounted. And so, we're really trying to make everything better, and we're just trying to shore up the portions that have been ignored. Um, so do you feel I take your point about how people may have viewed you as the first Black president of PIDC and what that did to the staff and what that did to, the optics from the outside. Do you feel like it changed the dynamic of how things actually operated within the company, or was it just more everyone's posture toward that role changed, more of a, internal thing?
That's a that's a great question. I think there's me being a Black woman in the role and then my personality. So I do think that my personality has brought some change to the office. I'm probably a little bit more laid back. I have an open door policy. and people feel comfortable talking to me about things. And I'm really interested in how the staff feel about their role and working here. So I've been spending a lot of time on kind of internal processes and making sure that the staff feel equipped and confident in their roles. But being Black on top of that, I do think that I bring a level of comfort to employees who probably didn't think they had a voice in the organization. I think by bringing in someone who looks like them or is from the same neighborhood they grew up in, that they feel more confident in being able to speak up and advocate for themselves. And again, my personality, I try to create that space for people to do that. It was, we had a holiday party when I first got here. And at the end, some folks wanted to put on a little music, after we did the holiday music, and they put on the wobble. And I did the wobble. And I think people were frozen, like, wait a minute, the PIDC president is doing the wobble. And then someone came up to me, and, I didn't think anything of it. And not that dancing is the only way to show that you're Black, right?
Mm.
But someone said to me, that meant more to us than you know. And I think it was a combination of being Black and, again, my personality, whereas they feel that they have a voice here. They feel that there's someone here who understands them a little differently than a past president. And, not to speak disparagingly about any past president, because everyone comes with their own style and with their own way of doing employee engagement. But being Black definitely creates a different atmosphere for the employees, specifically Black employees, but I think all employees, and being a woman on top of
Yeah, I have uh, professional relationship with both the past two immediate presidents of PIDC, and I have a hard time imagining them wobbling
that. Yeah,
at a party.
exactly. Exactly.
I'm just
Or
trying to
even
picture
knowing
that in my
what
mind.
it is.
Yeah, exactly. So,
A line dance pops up in the conference room. And even knowing like what are we doing? And letting them do it.
yeah, no, I think you're right. Those kinds of intangibles in those moments often have an outsized impact that we don't really anticipate. And it's not like okay, I'm going to make sure that I do something like this in front of people. It just happens, right? Because it's part of who you are. But I think you're right. It does mean a lot.
Mhm.
You know, I I spent a fair amount of time, both in my volunteer time as well as professionally, mentoring businesses and trying to help them to grow and have strategies, etc. And one thing I've found is there are lots of businesses that people try to start and lots of ideas, and a lot of them fail. And so there's a popular phrase of support Black business, and I think that's great. But I think that my position is it's important to support Black business owners and Black executives, because even if they don't succeed at a particular venture, if they grow from that, they're able to succeed at the next one or the one after that, etc. So that's sort of been my personal mantra. But
Mhm.
it sort of what I found as I've been a mentor through a number of different organizations is there's not a lot of I see a lot of people coming in trying to get help who are Black and brown, but not a lot of people on the mentoring side who are there to give them an example of, hey,
Mhm.
you could be on this side of it, if after some point. So, do you think that we have any particular responsibility toward one another in terms of developing or helping or supporting? And if so, how does that manifest in your mind? Black executives helping Black executives.
I definitely believe that we have a responsibility to mentor, coach people who are either aspiring to be at our level or aspiring to open their own business, and we have knowledge of what it takes to do that. I think one of the issues that we have seen over the decades in terms of supporting Black business growth is the lack of information. either information doesn't get to our Black business owners, or if they're denied a loan or denied opportunity, no one tells them why. And sometimes there is no reason why, right? We got to be honest about that. But when there is a reason why, no one sits down and explains, like, here's where you are, but here's what you could do to move past that and then become either financeable or have a product or service that's investable or that we can support. And so, some of it's not even a formal mentorship. It's just making sure that groups have the same organizations as same information as other groups have. And being honest with Black business owners about where they are and what they need to do to get to the next level. One of the things I really enjoy about my role are those opportunities when I get to sit down with business owners and talk about their business. I hear the passion, I hear the excitement, and then I can come in, with a little bit of the dose of reality and say, okay, I know you love what you do, and I know this is what you're trying to do, but let me explain to you what the banks are looking for. Let me explain to you what marketing means and how you can translate your passion into a message that will resonate with your customers. Let me explain to you things that I know that you don't know. And it's not, a condescending kind of approach or trying to say you don't know enough and so you shouldn't be a business. It's just a conversation because that's how businesses get access to things. In other communities, they talk about everything. They talk about interest rates, they talk about terms, they talk about this is the place where you should go to access this type of financing. This is the company that can help you with pricing on certain goods and services. And I think we have a responsibility to share what we know with the Black business community.
Yeah, I agree. And we recently had a dinner for a number of CEOs in the Philadelphia area, and we talked about this topic. And one of the things that was expressed was a feeling of responsibility to um, forge business relationships where they could. So whether that is, making sure that there's a fair shot at opportunities for out when they need to outsource to someone, that there's, a company that can take that on, just black or brown, or making sure that in hiring decisions that we try to take into account the composition of our workforce and be deliberate about representation, that sort of thing. But one thing that came up was that had a few different views was when you do something like that, there's sort of the okay, you may be entering into a situation or an environment where there is, as you allude to, a standard or a set of expectations that you're not accustomed to. So it's not as though you can't do that, but you may not be accustomed to anyone sort of demanding that or expecting that of you. And so there was a discussion about whether you need to prepare people uh, for that standard, or whether you give them a chance and it's more on the job training and you're just going to forbear that learning curve. I don't know if you have a perspective on that phenomenon, but it was something that other CEOs were, had different approaches toward.
Yeah, I wish I could have been at dinner because that topic comes up a lot. And the way I think about it is like you have to learn the game before you can change the game. And so I am very much of the school of thought that things are done a particular way, whether we like them or not. And if you have a strong understanding of how it works and how you need to get things done, then once you have that down, you can start to change it in a way that is more beneficial or more helpful to you and your community. When it comes though to kind of small business development, I do think that there are some fundamentals that are not going to change, and we need to be really solid in those. And so some of that can come through on the job, but some of it I think has to come up front with being able to sit down with the business and say, these are the 5 things that are non-negotiable. And you have to get these 5 things right before you can go and talk to anyone else about any other types of financing. And I think some businesses may balk at that because it's like, well, I don't want to have to conform to what they want from me, and I don't want to have to do things that aren't inherent to how I want to run my business. But they are fundamentals in our economy, and we can get around them, but we got to learn them first before we can change them. So I do think that I'm probably in that camp of, let's be sure that we understand what's needed and then move from there. Maybe that's still kind of the on the job, like learn how it goes and then change things, as opposed to setting up a different level of standards for our businesses as opposed to others.
Well, and then whenever you take that, it's sort of seen, from the other side of that coin as an accommodation that's unfairly made and denying someone who could have walked in and just did it, right? So, do you think that or do you feel pressure when you encounter those situations to, do what you just described despite how that may look to others, or do you feel a pressure of ensuring that, hey, no one, what I've done is unassailable and no one can question it because it was, objectively fair, if you will, across the board?
I I think that the objectively fair is how I approach most things. But there is a need to review what we're saying is objectively fair, right? So when I look at policies and procedures, like I look at how we contract, it shouldn't be all on the contractor to do all of these different things to meet this particular objective. Like we have a responsibility to look at our contracting process. Are there biases or hurdles that we have in there that do not make this process objectively fair? So I don't think that you can just take what's already been done and just continue to do it and say that you're being objectively fair. There has to be some work to ensure that it is truly objectively fair when you're looking at doing business with black and brown businesses, because there's some things in there that, in different processes, that may not jump off the page as being biased or being discriminatory. Those are the things we need to pay attention to. And those are the places where, as Black executives, we can move the needle. We have that ability to say, this isn't going to work for 90% of the Black businesses in this city. How can we change this so that we still have an objective and fair process? But we know from history and data that this is a hurdle that 90% of the businesses cannot meet. So I feel like I'm not directly answering your questions. Let me know if I need to expand a little bit. But I think there's more we can do to change some systems and processes so that it doesn't seem like we're having a carve out or a special inroads or a special program.
Mhm.
All generally programs need to be reviewed and need to be fixed to be able to make room for businesses that have been historically cut out of that program or process.
Yeah, amen. I definitely agree with that. And, I was struck as were making that point that one is it's not, it's a complex issue. It's not something that you can lay down one heuristic and it applies in every situation. And, I know there's situational. But the other thing I was really struck by was, there's a wealth of wisdom and knowledge and experience that are evident from what you're saying. And um, yet someone may go their entire business career, even in Philadelphia, and never stumble upon Jody Harris or never get the benefit of some of the things that that could help others. And we've been really talking about at the Onyx table, how is it that we try to make that wisdom, that collective wisdom, more visible and amplify it so that people can have access to it. Um, and so this idea of thought leadership that accrues to communities that really need it, and also the experts that can give it, is something that we're trying to wrestle with. So I'm curious, have you found that there are any particular methods or ways that You've been able to sort of demonstrate thought leadership in a way that these kinds of underserved communities really can find it and take hold of it. Is there anything you found as effective, or anything that you wish was out there that could aid in that?
I think that making yourself accessible really involves meeting the businesses where they are. And for example, MedWeek in Philadelphia, which is an opportunity for minority owned businesses, diversity owned businesses, however you want to characterize it, to get exposure to groups in addition to city departments that have opportunities and resources for small business growth. And I participated in a session with some other community lenders, and it was a packed room just explaining our process, explaining what we have available, and then also saying to the small business owners, these are the things you need to do to be able to successfully engage with a community lender. And that required us, the executives, getting out of our offices, getting out of Center City, and going to where the small businesses are. I think we can do a better job at that. I think we can do a better job at organizing opportunities to bring groups together. And I think it's also inherent that we make ourselves accessible to people that have questions or have individual issues, and they just need someone to kind of walk them through it and kind of talk to them about it. And so, as executives, as you get higher up, you do become more removed
Mm.
from, you have people that do that, right? You got teams that do that. But I think it's important for us to show up and be present in those conversations.
Yeah, I agree, and I think one thing that, my personal mission is to let people know, hey, Jody is out there. There are Jodies of the world who can help you, and you may not have seen them, you may not have had personal experience, but let me show you something that she said. Let me tell you something that she's done, because it's analogous to what you're trying to do or what you aspire to do. And so that sort of megaphone function is where I'm really focusing, some of my time. Um,
Yeah. And facilitating those conversations. Because as we were just talking about, I think a barrier that we don't think about is the intimidation factor,
mm,
right? If you are going to be part of a larger network panel and you've either got to pay to come or you've got to go downtown to come and it's a 3 day thing and you're running a business, you're not coming. You don't know the community, you don't know the organizer, you may not feel that you even belong in that space. So, if there's a way as Black executives we can facilitate more comfortable conversations where people feel they belong and they can ask the question, object, and have objective answers, no judgment. Like we're just talking, trying to help you get connected to who you need to get connected to. I think those spaces are really important. And I don't know if we have enough of them in
yeah.
Philadelphia.
And I think that that point transcends just the idea around, business owners, et cetera, but even Black professionals in general.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
remember when I had my last company, and I was like you, we had a office that was high up in a building somewhere, so there was no storefront, people walking in. But because I am from Philly, I have cousins and relatives who are here, and there was we had a job opening that we were advertising for, and my cousin went to our website, saw this thing, and called me and asked me, what is a business analyst? And so I answered that question, but it felt good that he had that access to someone who could not only answer that question, but could give him an assessment of, could he be a business analyst, and those sorts of things. So I think that there's something there about just being accessible. In
Yeah.
that case, he had a personal relationship with me, so he felt unarmed. I mean, he it wasn't intimidating for him to ask me that. But how many other people would never have made that phone call, right?
Yeah.
And so I think we do need to do something to facilitate that, or to lower those barriers that people perceive are there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that that kind of full circle to the question about being the head of PIDC, I think for years there were probably businesses and developers who didn't think there was someone they could call at PIDC. I mean, they probably could call any president and get a response, but I'm finding that people appreciate the fact that they have my cell phone. And even if it's not a deal that we're doing the transaction for, they have a question about, can you at least just tell me who owns that parcel or what's happening in that community? And they have a direct dial to just get more information.
Yeah, very, very important. Well, I know that you're a very busy person, and I don't want to hold you beyond. You've been very generous with your time. I would offer you the last word if there's something that sort of encapsulates what we've talked about, or something that we didn't mention that you think is important to hear. I'd love to give you an opportunity to close us out in that way.
Okay. Well, thank you, Lee. I think this is fantastic in sparking these conversations and bringing people together to talk about these issues. And I think we can't lose sight of the fact that being a Black executive can be a lonely space. It can be a space where there aren't people that you can turn to when something happens in your office and have that same conversation as you would have like between the two of us now or at your dinner. So I really appreciate you making the space, and I would just advocate for more opportunities because I think a lot of us are going through similar challenges. A lot of us have things that we want to celebrate that probably as Black executives only we understand that we're celebrating. And so just making that space, I would just encourage you to keep doing that. And however I can be helpful, and if I need to get some more Black folks to come and participate, I'm happy to do that. But it's great to have a space to talk to others who are in similar positions.
Great. Well, that's what we're endeavoring to do, and we will, in fact, do it. So, thanks again for sitting down and giving your perspective. Really appreciate all that you shared today, and look forward to more conversations going forward.
Great. Thanks, Lee.